No.
We are live.
Oh, you got to.
What are you looking for? Agenda? Laurel had all this on the table. I don't know if Dave has it on his computer. This is stuff that I'm gonna talk about. So I don't know if you have everything that Laurel had out on the table or not.
I emailed it to everyone.
I
Okay,
don't remember seeing this.
you don't, this is my stuff when it comes to me.
Got it.
I gave Laurel a copy just now.
And Steve has a copy. I emailed it to him.
Here it is. It's like one copy of it.
Oh, Steve's here by Zoom, okay. So I'll call this meeting to order. In the interest of time, I'd like to forego the Pledge of Allegiance. We've got a lot to do. I'd like to keep it to as close to 1 hour as possible. Roll call, please.
Mr. Behrens,
Here.
Mr. Christensen,
Present.
Mr. Walter,
Here.
Mr. Popa,
Here.
all present.
Looking for late additions or deletions to the agenda? I have none.
I'm okay.
I'm okay.
All right.
Can I hear a motion then to approve the agenda? So I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
So we have an agenda. Public comment?
The number to call in for public comment is 231-256-8109. Not gonna.
Should we wear a mask at this point? I can do it.
I guess that's personal choice at this point. I've actually got two on.
I would, but it's hard for me to read
Yeah, I
my
know.
glasses fog out.
Me too.
Otherwise I
My
would.
glasses.
We do have the barriers. And I do not see anybody streaming at this point.
Okay? If public comment should come in, we can move back to that, given our circumstances. So I'd like to move on with our agenda items. Our first item that, on the agenda is the signage issue. There are two things there. John, Walter, do you want to explain some of where this came from?
Yes.
Our discussions so far, yours and mine.
Does everybody have one of these colored ones, Scott? You got it. Okay. So this is an approach that to put signs in some locations.
John, could you speak into
Oh,
the
yeah, I'm
microphone?
sorry.
That's okay.
What you're seeing, the 8.5 by 11 of a colored up signage that could be put on some different locations with an arrow saying you are here. And could be put on a post. Yesterday, I was out to Kodak Dunes and they had signs like this and it was on an 8.5 by 11. And so I think that the 8.5 by 11 could be the basis, even though I called out a much larger one. But after going there, I think this was sufficient. And there may be about 4 places to put them in. And, an example, my wife and I went out there, I thought I was gonna ski, she was gonna hike. I started skiing, she started hiking, and, I decided skiing wasn't good, I went back, and she was off by herself, and she wasn't familiar with it. However, there were little posts with the orange paintings on them. What are those for?
Oh, the stakes,
Stakes, huh?
that's for the grooming,
For grooming.
to indicate which trails are gonna be groomed,
Uh-huh.
if and when.
Well, she just followed the stakes around and came back.
Well, you would,
Because there were points on there that my phone, when I was down there, by Bear Creek and the covered bridge down there, Midway Bridge, that, my phone didn't work. They get to call her on some other part. So that's the basis of it.
John and I walked around with this idea that there was some need for wayfinding signage, that is, where am I? And principally, how do I get back to the parking lot? And we did identify, well, not counting such signage right at the beginning of the trails from each parking lot area, we identified 1, 2, 3, I think it was 4, although I'm not now seeing the fourth, locations where trails come together, but you cannot see either parking lot. And while personally I find it amazing that somebody would go out there and get lost, I know that it happens. I've been there when a small group of women asked where they were, how do you get back to the parking lot, and that sort of thing. So that's the origination of our effort to develop some sort of wayfinding signs. Now, we started, John and I did initially with an ortho photo, a photo from the air of the land. I had suggested to John that I thought it was, well, more detail than maybe was needed. We discussed what kind of look would be good for people to orient when they are out on the trail and they come to a sign, being able to look around and orient that, yes, they are at this particular sign or whatever. So John has drawn this up on an ortho photo. John, did you eliminate some of the detail from that photo in doing this?
No, I colored over what I didn't think was needed. And you also mentioned that there's some verbiage or stuff that we could take out and simplify it.
I had wondered out loud with John, and this is not something that I felt strongly about, but that perhaps the map could be done with principally the old fairway areas that are more open and separated by lines of trees that we can see in this photo, that it could be done with much less detail and just some stylized trees along the line in between the open spaces, and those open spaces being represented by simply blank colored areas, tan or some color. And I see John's point as we walked around that it might help having some of this detail. Now, my own personal reaction to this map is that we don't need anywhere near as many identifiers. I would cross out most of the identifiers that are on that. It seems to me they don't add anything except a little bit of confusing visual detail. Just my opinion. John Popa, Steve Christensen, any thoughts?
Well, just looking at you had the map out and I looked at it and what you just said. If we're gonna do it this year within our budget, or are we looking at estimates, or do we have a go-ahead for going? Yeah, and I don't know how many you wanna have. I agree with everything you said is good, but what's sitting in front of us? We need 12 signs, 3 ones with arrows, Do we need one how to get to the parking lot, one to tell that this is a creek? What's in front of us that we gotta make a decision on? Because I think it's great what we're doing,
Well,
but we gotta have something to say. I make a motion that
yeah,
we buy 12 signs that look like this and the other 10 that looks like that and whatever.
well, eventually we're gonna need that. I didn't know if we were at that point yet. And in terms of number, let me just say, if you count the 2 parking lots, that's 2, and I see the 3 other locations. I think we were talking about basically 5 signs altogether.
Okay,
1, as users leave each parking lot and begin towards, and maybe with the main parking lot, there would have to be a 6th, that is, they can go north and up that way, or they can go west along 641. So maybe an orientation sign at each of those. At the other parking lot, there's really only 1 trail that leads off. But then we add 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 other locations where, again, trails come together, but you can't visually see either parking lot. So I think we're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 signs, John.
I don't have any more to add to it. I don't know how many signs we need, and I think John and you are on top of that. Identify which ones you want, show it, and then we can take it to the board, or I mean, not the board, our Parks and Rec committee, and say, here, we think we need to buy 8 signs, and this is about what they're gonna cost.
We should get a quote before you bring it to the full commission.
Now,
Not the commissioners, I was thinking of the Parks and Rec commission.
That's what I'm talking
Well,
about.
they might tell us they don't wanna do it.
I'm talking about the Parks and Rec Commission. You need a quote to take to the full 10-member board. Does that help?
well, we need a quote,
We're
not a
wasting
bid.
time.
And do we need 3 quotes?
Well, if it's under a certain amount, then no, you can go with 1 quote.
What
Yeah,
are the
not too-
signs? I have a question. What are the signs going to be made of? Are we talking a laminated map?
I can answer that, Steve. I went to 2 different printers. I went to Quick Print and I went to,
Traverse Repro.
Travis Reaver, that's what it was. And this is a laminate onto a thin steel plate with a backer on it. And when I went to Hodag Dunes yesterday, theirs was of a similar material. And they just screwed this onto a 4x4 about those. And theirs was just 8.5 by 11. But I was concerned about that too. Well, do we have to put it in a case? Do we have to do something like that? But we just talked to the Conservancy. We'll put the ones up at Hodag Dunes to see where they went.
Did either of those, well, you've got a verbal quote or idea of what cost might be, did they talk about the durability of that kind of laminate? I mean, it seems like that's more the kind we're going for, because it seems like it would be durable.
Yeah.
But I don't know that.
Dave, I don't know. I just looked at the one at Hodag Dunes and know that I've been there, and of course you've been there more than I have, that it's been there a while.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I can follow up on it.
I think in follow-up, well, that's one thing we'll look at is durability of this kind of choice.
Yeah.
It's certainly better than other choices that might be there. I mean, that would not require a separate covering, a separate glass cage or anything like that. So I think we're looking at that kind of laminate. Does that help, Steve?
It does. Scott, what do you think of that application?
Holding it in my hand, it seems nice, but I don't know, you know, it's durable. It's printed on there, it's not laminated.
Yeah, you're right.
Um, Depends on the cost. I know like those, that clear sign that we got for the monkey flower, that was quite expensive.
Yeah, we were shy of $1,000 for that.
Right, and this, you know, lasted 5-6 years, and it's cheap, you know, might be worth it, you know, even if you gotta replace it.
So,
I'm sorry, you said something only lasted 5 years. Was that the?
If it lasted 5 years and you had to replace it, if it was cost effective, you know, it's, you don't want to spend $1,000 on it, so.
There was $1,000 for one sign?
Yeah,
Holy cow.
and it's only made in one place in the country.
We're not there. I got a
That's what
quote
the
from,
National Park uses.
yeah, that's the company that National Park uses that company, and
Sounds bad.
the Grand Traverse Bay Watershed Center uses that. I think the Conservancy uses that company. It's there aren't too many companies that do what that company does, and it turns out to be a product that's very long lasting. That's a specialty sign, a wayfaring sign. In my mind, could be something like John had in his hand, or similar, that would not be huge, not be a huge cost, but be very durable. Anyway, it looks like John found his paper.
yeah, I don't think we were gonna talk this. Travis reproduction.
You gotta talk in that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Travis reproduction had, if it was on a foam core board, which I don't think we want, and I was talking 24 by 18 at that time. They were, $30 a piece for 4 would be $120. And then when we talked about digital print, Scott, I think that's what we're talking, digital prints, aluminum composite material, aluminum sheets with a plastic core substrate, 418 by 24 single-sided flatbed print made from Light something, 3M economy. They cut it out of 40. Anyway, they are $75 a piece, and there's 4 of them. That was $299. And then they went to flatbed print, MDO, and that was 115. So anyway, the most expensive one on an aluminum plate was $75 a piece. And it went from $30 a piece to $75, and I think the $30 a piece isn't what we want.
So it's $75 a piece times 6, we're up at $450 or so.
Right.
So we're well under we're within a range of where we can get a quote and make a decision and make some move.
That's 24 by 18 though, so it'd probably be less.
Probably would be less if we went with 8.5 by 11. On that count, I think the 8.5 and 11 personally would be big enough.
Yeah, what I saw at Hodag Dunes when we hiked there, and Hodag Dunes has a lot of little trails, and there are a lot of little colors to it. So I'll get you this copy.
Are the Hodak Dune signs on a ortho photo? Is that the background? Or is it
I thought it was like a photograph.
but an aerial photograph?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did have an aerial photo of part of it when they were doing the aeration design. And it shows it here, but and we could have a drone shoot and that sort of stuff, but somehow it seemed beyond the need. And then one of the things we had talked about when it was a golf course and the fairways there, somehow to me, it doesn't read that way, because what I read was Scott's 10-foot wide, whatever that thing he mows, that seemed to be the definition of the space.
You know, I see that point, and we had talked, you and I had talked about this before, so I'm comfortable with the orthophoto. I would, now I want to hear some opinion on this. I would take out, starting at the top of this picture here, I would take out the identifiers overlook,
Right.
Long Pond West, Long Pond East, perhaps the two bridges. Those identifiers might be left. I'm not sure we need to name the creek right there. I don't think we need to name the ponds. So Shipwreck Pond, Frog Pond. Again, the purpose of this is to tell people who are out walking where they are relative to the parking lot. That's really the only necessary message, I think, for this particular sign. I don't know that we need the legend at the bottom. I think it, although it gives the distance, that may be somewhat important for the different trail colors. But I would keep picnic area, etc., fishing bridge. I would keep that off this particular sign, in my own opinion.
Maybe bring a clean copy, and make sure that, you've talked to the company and make sure that, what we're going to reproduce will be legible. And then, at that point, we can, make a recommendation to buy 6, that kind of thing. It seems like we're like one step away, and I don't know how soon we need them up. Are we in a rush, or where are we?
I don't think we're in a rush. We need to do this correctly. I do think this is something we can get done, this coming season. If in fact it goes, if we don't take steps until somewhere at the end of June to early July, there's going to be another flyover and a more contemporary orthophoto taken. Rob Hansen in the planning department will have access to a whole new generation of aerial photography for the county, but not until somewhere at the end of June or 1st of July. John and I have talked about trying to make these decisions and make some move before that, before late spring.
Yeah, is there a way that, when we have it published, we can adjust the background color or intensity to make sure that it's very legible? I know that the new flyover is going to be really nice, but if we can get something out that's very legible and very understandable, even without the new flyover, I think we should probably go ahead and do it.
I suppose that may come down to, another step or so in getting a sample from the proposed printers. John Copeland.
Steve reflected just what I was gonna say. I think we're all in favor that we need signs. I think John should come back like Steve said, reduce it. We want 6 signs, we want 8, list what they are. A good estimate of what we think they're gonna cost. Here, I was looking at signs that you had here before, you thought you were gonna spend $600 on signs. We don't need quotes, but if we're gonna tell our park committee here the next time we meet, we can just say, we're working on signs. We think we need about 6 of them, and we'll be back to you at a later meeting on what we think it's gonna cost. John could have a sheet here saying what he wants, where he wants to put them. And we can always put more signs up at another year. And so we think we ought to start with signs and let's move forward with it. Boil it down to what you got, what you think the material is going to be. Now, the other thing to consider is, Scott, I don't know what kind of posts you want to put these on. We just got these signs. You're going to put them all on Scott's desk, or does he need to put painted posts in there or hang them on wood 4x4s? What? We need to think about that, not today.
No.
But, and then we'll go to the board here, and if we got money in this year's budget, then we go out for quotes and we get it. And if we don't, we got to put it for next year's budget.
Well, I think that's clear in terms of then our work.
Let's move forward.
John, and I'll keep going on this particular topic and we'll keep going. I would like one more piece of feedback though on this. What are the feelings about these identifiers? The little white rectangles that say tunnel of trees and long pond. How much of that kind of information do you think we need on a wayfaring sign?
I kind of like them for some areas, but I don't know which ones. I have to have someone that walks around it all the time, and you know, I take too much for granted because I looked at it all since I was a kid.
Right.
But I never knew where this other bridge was until just a few years ago.
I agree with you, Dave, that the picnic areas are just aware of those. And I don't think the overlooks are there because I come out to the spot and I said, oh yeah, it's kind of, it's not like I'm on a mountain looking at something.
Right.
You know? So I didn't think on that.
Well, then how about if you and I attack that same issue and do what John has said, and that is come up with a concrete, even more. But so far, you like what we've done so far.
Okay.
And I think we're all in favor of it.
Great.
And then maybe you and I just walk it and say, do we need this? Okay, good.
You know, under signage, one other issue has come up. Do we need an ice safety sign between the parking lot and the fishing pond? Do we have one we can move over there? Do we need to?
Can't remember if there's one there, but I thought there used to be.
No, let's see. Was it, first part of last week, my wife and I went hike that, so I watched that. Scott, I said, no, there isn't. Then I walked over to all the signage and verbiage at the end of the parking lot, and there wasn't. And I go out with a post holder I got and move the one that's at the, I call it the far end of the big bridge, because there's one sitting there. This is the bridge, and this is the parking lot. There's a sign on a 4x4 over here about ice.
What do you think about moving that, guys? I mean, it seems like a silly location to have it at the northeast end of the bridge. It's at the end of somebody's effort. I mean, they're not gonna see it till they've already gone out.
Scott, what do you think about moving a sign versus putting another sign?
I'm totally against signs anyway. People don't read them, so whatever you'd like, I'm willing to go for.
You know, I thought that too, Scott, my concern. So I wrote a little note today about that.
Our signage is okay with our insurance company. They've reviewed them all.
Okay,
So we're good with liability. That's all I can say, so.
Well,
If you want a new sign, we can certainly order as many as you want, they're pretty cheap. We'll put them wherever you like.
I've written today, but you covered my concern. My main concern of mine is the safety of children by water. Both with signs about thin ice and having a place to fish close to water without concern of sliding in. I hate to say it, are we covered for our liability issue? But you said we are, so I don't need to worry about it.
In our last inspection, we were.
Okay.
Nothing's changed, so.
Well,
I don't need to go there, when I go there with my grandkids, they get out of the car, they run to the closest part of the pond.
My problem is we keep putting signs up everywhere and then it looks like a I-75, a bunch of billboards.
Yeah.
And people just ignore them after a while. They don't look at them anyway. Well, I gotta read that sign, that sign, that sign, that sign. You know, where does it end?
Guy, you're right. When I went around here and I'm hiking around last week, and I'm over at the frog pond, there's a sign there at the frog pond, and there's tracks all over the ice. And you know, it hadn't been that cold. So as long as they're covered liability, then I guess it's good.
Okay.
I don't think any of us are in disagreement, Scott, that I don't think any of us want a whole bunch of signage out there.
Mm.
The one, ice safety, I wanted to raise that issue. Is it something we need to think about simply from the safety standpoint, not that we need lots of signs?
Oh, certainly. Well, I know that's not the goal. But
Okay.
and I'm not arguing about it. I just, you asked me how I feel, that's how I feel about signs. And I'm willing to go whatever route you guys want, so.
Well, I don't know if we've resolved that exactly, but I think we're ready to move on. Okay? Bridge painting.
The bridge painting, I'm looking at our last meeting that John had here in October of things that needed to be done. The two items was paint the Midway Bridge and paint the fishing bridge. And I didn't look at these, but after we talked about those in October, I went and got out a spec where we painted the Cedar Bridge. And I have that in front of you. And we didn't draw a long spec, but I put these things in there. If you're gonna have someone paint these are about the 6 items that you think you'd wanna do. Are you gonna scrape it? Are you gonna rust proof it? Then you're gonna do this and then scrape it and yada, yada, and then paint it. Do we need to do that to these 2 bridges? I don't know. I don't know the conditions of them. But if we wanna move forward to paint these bridges, then we gotta say, okay, we all agree we should. And if the committee then thinks we should, then we go out for bids. But I'm not gonna go get 3 bids now and then just have them sit there. If we are gonna paint, do you just want to steel brush them a little bit and paint them like John said? Or do we wanna say, we want this bridge painted so it's gonna last for the next 10 years? And that means you would do something like this. I don't know how much money's in a budget, but we could say, we're looking at, maybe we should put $20,000 in a budget for next year to paint bridges. And if we do, we'll draw some specs up and we'll go out for bids. I don't think it's gonna fly this year.
Certainly.
So who's looked at these bridges that close?
I know.
Have you?
Yeah.
Should we get them a real good coating and a real good rust proofing and something that's gonna last us until we retire?
Oh, yeah, just touching them up is not gonna work. mean,
I agree with you. The ones I look, you're just covering a
Yeah, they
little
need to
rust.
be done with this, like they did with Cedar Bridge,
Now, is that true?
convert the rust and everything else.
Is that true of the Midway Bridge where the paint's actually peeling on the wooden,
Well, no,
railing? Are there two different kinds of painting? One on the just simple
that
maintenance
bridge shouldn't
painting?
even have been painted when they replaced the wood, because the womanized was wet still.
Oh, no.
So you just can't paint womanized, it never works. So,
So that bridge is all wood?
yeah,
Okay.
the decking and the railings, but there's metal on there that has been painted.
Then we're looking at that big metal fishing bridge
Yeah,
that we need.
it was redone, I want to say 5 years ago, maybe,
But just lightly, right?
maybe less.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was done just before I started, so
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago, right? Now, how about the wooden railing on the fishing bridge, the Mac Bridge? Is that in need of maintenance painting? What little I looked at, it wasn't as in bad a shape as the
No,
steel.
not really.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
It is.
I've replaced a couple boards and haven't painted them, just because, you know, it never does work. In fact, I quit painting picnic tables because it's just better to look gray than it is to have paint peeling off it all the time, so.
And John Popa, I don't think, I certainly haven't addressed what I've done with bridge painting for this year at all. I think it's a big topic and job. But I think we need to do what we're doing.
Well, I'm willing to meet with a painter and say, if you have to do this and this and this, I don't want to quote. What would you think? A guy might say, oh, it's gonna take me about 6-8 days, and it'll probably cost this much. It'll probably cost about this much, and then we have to put it in the budget in September.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna go through and do all this unless people think we should paint it. And I think we should paint it. And Scott thinks we should paint it. And we should get some estimates to paint it.
Just to add to this, I did talk with Ray Pleva at Todd Yeoman's suggestion about the experience of painting the bridge in Cedar. I have the phone numbers and the contacts of the people that, were you involved in that then, John?
No, but I know exactly what they do.
They got quite a difference in estimate of picking the bridge up and moving it. The person who did it, seems to me that part of the bill was about $5,000. They also got a quote from Elmer's simply to pick it up and move it, and it was gonna be $17,000. So there could be quite a variety, so we have to search around. Now, they picked it up, moved it to a place down off Barney, where the sandblasting and the painting was done, and moved it back in one piece and set it in place. Do you suppose that sort of thing, we have an issue with height of the bridge that I haven't measured yet, but can the steel legs, the connection of the Mac Bridge to the ground, can that be cut off so we could lift it and move it and bring it back and set it back on in some way? Is that even a possibility? I don't know anything about such a.
I don't think we should think about it. That's a lot different than a Cedar Bridge. Cedar Bridge was a piece of old railroad car or something, and it worked just fine to lift it up. It was 60 feet long, and it was solid. This thing might fold in the middle for all I know. And it's a lot of work to do that.
Yeah.
Where you can get at this one underneath, where that one, they couldn't get underneath it. There was only that much water clearance.
Where do we go to find out? So we leave the bridge in place, we do, whether it's scraping it to clean it or sandblasting, where do we go to find out exactly what we're required to do to capture? Sandblasting or hand scraping? I mean, there's gonna have to be some prep if we leave the bridge in place.
That'll be in the specs.
I've got all that information from the state as far as regulations.
Okay,
I could forward that to you.
please do. I'd like to see it and get some sense of where we're going. I'm in agreement with John and with Scott that we need to attack this issue. Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, when we talked about this before, quite a long time ago, The idea came up that the ideal time to sandblast would be in the winter. And I don't know if that's possible, but if it were done in the winter, the mats could be spread underneath it to capture all of the sand and paint. One thing that we do is paint sample. We need to determine if the paint on the bridge is lead base or not. That'll dictate the cost and where we go and how we do it.
Okay,
I'll follow up on it.
I may have that information on the bridge specs. So they do have all the prints for it, so.
You might want to talk with Trudy Gala.
Would this help you, John? Work that through?
Talk with who?
Trudy Gala.
Oh, right, yeah, that's right.
She has a really good relationship with Envirologic that does a lot of stuff like that. They'd be able to tell you whether it needed it or not.
okay.
Trudy would tell me what?
Well, when it comes to hazardous waste collection, that kind of thing, Trudy could help you out with whether or not it needs it. Any extra steps you need to take.
But does Trudy or Scott, do you think there's knowledge of whether the paint is lead-based, or is that something we still need to have analyzed?
I'll find
I
out.
can see what it was spec'd
I'll
at.
take care of it all.
Okay, okay.
And I'm gonna get with Scott.
Okay, so we're in agreement that this is a topic we need to keep working on, and
That we'll move forward
we
with.
will move forward on it.
I'm not sure about the wooden bridge then. Someone else wants to brush it and scrape it and do all that. That looks like it's a wooden thing and doesn't need,
Tell you what, Scott and I will follow up on that
Yeah.
specifically because I have not yet determined whether that could fall under some possible Bill Watson crew work next summer. There's still issues there that I have I can't pull the ends together yet on, but Scott and I'll talk about those other two bridges that and maintenance painting there. In terms of whether it's needed, something that we need to move on now.
And look, it doesn't look good, and I don't know if you just, Scott, you just take the paint off? Is that a better solution? Okay.
Yeah,
And let it, and let
and
it,
just leave the womanized wood as it is.
let it weather.
Just let it weather.
Yeah.
You know.
Parking lot paving at the entrance. John Copeland.
see, I put that on because if you look at, and I went through this plan that we had for our grant, what they're gonna do here, do there, do this, and that all fell through. Well, part of it was to redo that entryway. So I met with our engineer and the road commission and stuff of what we need to do, and came up with some little bit of money figures that if we want to go through it this year, that it might cost up to 20 grand. Now, it's about 10 grand in asphalt, but we've got a divided island in here, so that's gonna go up a little bit. It's about another 3 grand for curbs. And it's gonna have to be wider again with that island. So I would say comfortably, you might be able to do it for 20. One thing I wanna do, if we move forward at this, is we got one of those little tunnel rats. We ought to look at that culvert. If we're gonna pave this thing, it might say, hey, this culvert's gotta be replaced. Now's the time to dig it out and replace it. And we have one of those tunnel rat things. We need to send it down there. But I don't wanna move ahead on this unless we do it now. We probably don't have money in the budget this year. It doesn't mean we can't plan for it. And then when it comes time, September, October, you have to go in front of the county commissioners and say we need a budget increase. First, we have to, of course, go through our Parks and Rec committee that we're gonna look into this, and is everybody in favor of spending upwards of this money for next year's budget? They think we got money in this year's budget. I don't know, but it might be all spoken for. But if you want to do it this year, it could get done. What's that, Scott?
It's getting close to being spoken for, used up.
Yeah.
So.
You're probably talking about $20,000, and it'll bring it up then. Got curbs, there's stones go on the road, it's unsafe right now. There's junk coming out on the highway, they're cutting corners. And it doesn't meet compliance with our standards. It was something that was put in years ago. It's
Pollution alone just going into the ditch, because that's a creek. It's actually
got dirt going in there, yeah. And so I think it should be for the year 2022, but I don't know. We can say that we talked about this entryway at Veronica Valley, and is Parks and Recreation want to go ahead with bids this year? If so, I'll go out and get bids and bring it back, but I don't want to then say, well, we don't have any money. And these guys are going to go fly a kite. Last time I'm going to do bids for you.
Bids go through the board office.
What?
Bids go through the board office.
Right. So I don't want to go out for bids unless we determine we're gonna
Now,
do it.
let me clarify
Right.
my own understanding of budget. When you say, Scott, it's nearly accounted for, didn't we just start a whole new budget year?
We did, but the clearing project at Miles, we don't know what the cost of that's gonna be yet. That's a major one. So we'll be going out for bids on that shortly. So until we get an idea of that, I can't say.
Okay, but now I'm more clear. You were talking about, even though we've started a new budget year, you have a sense, much more clearly than I do, that we're gonna be pretty close to using it and adding another 20,000.
Yeah, we're gonna, it's gonna be at least 20 grand in my feelings. So, that'll leave us 25,000 for some other capital thing, but right now,
Well, John Popa, we need to make some of this decision about, is this a priority we want to go for, et cetera. That has to be made by the end of June, because we have our budget. Myself, Steve's been involved. I'm vice chair, so I've been involved, and Melinda. We've had to meet the last 2 Junes and come up with our budget expectations for the whole next year. So we need to have our 10-person commission make a decision about the priority of this sort of thing.
We got a couple more months to do that. We got to tell people that we've been thinking about that. Do we think we want to spend that money this year? Go through their office, go out for bids and get it done this year, or should we put it off for next year and then put it in next year's budget? But that's a figure that I came up with without the curb. Might need to check the culvert, and that might cost $2 or $3 grand more. That's why I put my last entry there. And I'll try getting that culvert checked.
I would think that'd be something that we could focus on getting done this spring for our knowledge.
Oh yeah, I'll get that culvert checked.
Okay.
And I've got a quote, I got an idea what's gonna cost. We put these things in and we see them in all the time. And this is about what it costs. And so I'm pretty comfortable with that budget range.
Steve?
Yeah, I think when we get to the commission and we get to Veronica Valley section in the commission meeting, we can talk about the things that we're looking at and put them in a priority. We've got a rough idea what the paving would cost for the entrance of Veronica Valley. We're inching our way toward the bridge painting. eventually we'll have an idea on that. That, to me, that looks like that's another year out. We don't have a good idea whether it's lead paint yet. We've got a ways to go to figure out that one. So, and then we're going to be looking at the safety around the old putting green. So we're going to have some priority here that we can offer when we get to the full commission. The full commission will be looking at probably that one that Scott mentioned as a large item. And there may be another item or two. So what we'll end up with at the commission level will be kind of a laundry list of items. And then as a commission, we'll probably at that point earmark our way forward. All we can do is the committee level is say, okay, here are the things that we see, and this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. 1 is about this, 2 is about this, and 3 is about this, and move forward with a discussion at the commission level. I think all of those would fall into that category. Whereas the signage, we could make a recommendation to do. The big ones, we just have to show the commission which are our priorities and then hash it out there, I think.
Okay. And I think we're clear on the next steps with each of those that we're going to
I'll
take.
move forward on that then.
Excellent. John Walter, I think back to you for a minute with your drawings of, well, some of what we've discussed at this level before, but for improving the fishing safety around the old putting green.
I think John did some drawings too, also.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, John?
Yeah, and they sort of agree with what we got.
Yeah, that's also too.
This has been who's making the lead on this? This has been a thing that's been going on now for half a dozen years, right, Scott? At least.
Well, you've been bringing it up for the last half dozen years.
Well, a little drill fell in there, and it got to the point where are we gonna put railings up, are we gonna do this and that? So I looked at what was presented on our big plan when we wrote this grant.
Mm-hmm.
And it got revised 3 times. The first one, he said we need to do something, and it was $75,000. Another one was 40, and as we kept whittling down the grant, it got it down to like 30,000 to do something in this area. So if we got the grant, we all agreed that we wanted to improve it. Well, we don't have the grant. And so I had sketches and drawings made up, and I brought them to the full committee one time, and I don't know, it just evaporated. I'm not gonna pursue it anymore unless someone wants to do it. That little packet I gave you in front of you, I went diving down there and looked at that entire edge. So there's that diver on the last page.
Yeah, that's you?
That's me. I identified where it is. It's that little peninsula. So I had this all made up if I was going to meet with a contractor, which I did. That cross section AA, if he hooks onto that with a backhoe and rips out those logs, then we got to put a one-on-one slope, remove. And you can come up with the volume to remove all that dirt, lay down stone, and John had a sketch in there too. I think you put approximately surface could be just what?
Yeah, I put a width on that of 6 feet, partially because I thought it would be good to have this adaptive for barrier free.
I like that, 6 feet. But what kind of surface did you have there?
Well, last time we talked, I sort of like a wood deck, and people said, well, no, we don't want that. So I said, well, you can do whatever you want to, but I kind of like the stone there rather than just the grass.
I like that stone too, because sod will gradually fill in that stone, and they'll probably be throwing those stones at the turtles and stuff for a while. But it's more ecologically, you're not gonna slip in it.
Yeah.
1-to-1, I could calculate the volume. So I took a contractor down there a while back, and I said, if you had to do all this, what do you think? And he said, it'd probably take me a week. I'd haul all this extra material out. We'd agree on a final design. I'd haul this out, I'd have to level this out, I'd have to bring in stone, hook all that muck out, and we'd get the permit. And he said, probably take me a week. And I'm thinking $1,000 an hour, a guy and a couple of pieces of equipment. So you're talking about 40 grand.
Whoa.
And if we want to do it and do it right, this isn't railings, it isn't anything else. Those cedar logs down there will probably stay there for a long time. They're underwater. It could stay the way it is, but it's a sharp drop, and there's a slope going right down to it. And we've identified it as a need, and it was put into our big Veronica Valley grant funding, that we want something done there. So if we're gonna have something done, I wouldn't do any more designing. There was another guy I was gonna meet with, and I still may, but we need to let the Parks and Rec know that we wanna set some money aside, and what year do you want to put it in? And if you're gonna put some money, this is about what it's gonna cost. And that's as far as we'll go. There's no way we can do it this year unless someone's got some deep pockets. But if we're in agreement, we want to do something, then we first got to start with getting budget. And then John and I can draw up pictures. John and I can draw up this entryway pictures too. We can do all that. These pictures aren't that bad. I'm probably 90% of what I think it could be, and two of us could get our heads together. But I wouldn't lift another 10 until we think we want to go ahead and do this. And we should just bring it up to our Parks and Rec that we're still thinking of this, and we got to put it in next year's budget so no one's surprised.
Now, from your drawings, the underwater cedar logs that are stacked up making the retaining wall, I would think we don't want to take those out. If we can get away with not taking those out, or do we need to take that old wooden retaining wall out? Won't we get into extra permitting issues in terms of water disturbance? And then what does go on top? Can we leave them in and make, as John Walter has drawn, a 6-foot wide packed gravel surface around that peninsula, leaving the old retaining wall in?
Well, that's a possibility. I think those old retaining walls will stay there for a while. They've been in there about 40 years. I poked at them. They're just cedar posts that are held in place by cedar posts. The whole thing slides in the lake for some reason or another. Then we'll be at this again. If you wanted to do it economically, John's sketch there, leaving the cedar things in, but you have to be flush to the water so that if someone falls in, it can get out. Right now, they can't. Those cedar, I don't know how big of a cliff there is between those cedar things. What does my dimension show?
You mean the drop from the cedar retaining post to the water?
I guess it shows them on my sketch page at section AA. I measured 4.5 feet. Those posts come right to the top of the water. So if we did chop back 6 feet, which I like John's idea, and made it level, a person could pull and get on his belly and get out of there without going up a big thing. That would definitely save some money, not having to hook them out. The permit would be a lot easier. We would just have to go through Steve for soil and erosion. If we wouldn't be filling or monkeying inside that water, it would probably be a lot cheaper.
I talked to our insurance guy again about this because several things I'm not in favor of, but he said if you put a slope in here, it creates a beach and it's an attractive nuisance, basically.
It's a what?
An attractive nuisance. It's going to encourage people to go swimming there because there's a nice bank to go into the lake.
Well, that's a good point. So it's more in favor of just leaving that nice bank there and putting nice hard packed gravel behind it.
Just, yeah, behind it, you can.
And that would save a lot of time and money, a lot of muck removal and hauling away.
Right. And, you know, even if you put steel pilings to replace the cedar posts at some point in time and backfill up against the steel. I'm against doing that because I think that when you put that bank in there, it's going to take away from fishing. You know, a kid's not going to be able to walk up there and just drop his line in there.
Yeah.
A kid on a wheelchair or
That's true.
anybody, you know, they're having cast out there and then they're going to be all tangled up in the bridge and everything else.
That probably cut the cost in half because there's a lot of dirt, right? See that excavated volume? That's a lot of stuff that's got to be taken out of there, and that would reduce it. But I'm not sure we got the money in this year's budget even for $20,000.
A 6-foot path around that edge, it would be awesome.
That'd be big.
And it has to be crushed concrete, so it would be UA accessible.
Right.
So crushed stone, not so.
Like stone, whatever it is that they use on that.
So my recommendation is that we just let our full committee know that we're gonna move forward with something. We'll see some sketches by this summer that John and I can draw up and be ready to go to the budget and hopefully do it next year.
I've had that same kind of time frame in mind. I haven't been thinking of, again, we didn't get a grant, so now we're going at, well, let's start these improvements.
Yeah, we're gonna start picking at them.
And that means we have to be this whole 6 months in advance of the budget constantly.
Yep.
May I, if we're gonna proceed then, some with this idea of leaving the retaining wall as it is now, providing a 6-foot wide flat surface around the old peninsula. John Walter, in your drawing, you have the access to that, I believe over here on the side, from the parking lot. Would we be able to bring the proper slope for UA access right through the middle of the old green? So that then when the kids come out, they turn right or left?
You could, but the thought was, well, first of all, I like what you got, John. There. And the thought was, when I look at it, you come in with like a backhoe and you just move that dirt on top of the hill. We're not hauling it away or anything. So we're just, well, what I did, I went out there, my wife was out there, so I have an eye level. So I checked the existing change in grade from the water to the height of what that grade is now. It's approximately 3 feet. So I'm not trying to, so it's just pulling the dirt and reshaping that mound. And then we would have to handle the access. And for that reason, we wouldn't, if we went through the middle, then we've got these 2 humps and then we've got a thing down the center. So the idea was to just leave a hump and then come around the side of it so that we maintain the 1 in 12 slope so that it doesn't become a ramp. And so we need 36 feet. If you got 3 feet of change, we need 36 feet of general slope around it.
The reason I raised that, yes, Laura.
Steve, I think,
Steve, go ahead. Steve?
Yeah, thanks. I like the way the conversation is headed toward John Walters idea. It will be cheaper, and we'll keep our good fishing spots, and I think it'll be easier. I'm just looking at that last discussion. In my mind, when we're talking universal access, I think it's more than 6 feet in width, which I think is good. We might end up being more than 6 unless I'm mistaken. Universal accessibility is more than, I'm sorry, it's anyway, it's the new I'm getting my terms mixed up.
UA instead of ADA, yeah.
UA instead of ADA. Okay, but anyway, if we came at this from the parking lot directly at the middle of that old putting green, and as we got there, we split our access to the right and the left, and we put that walkway all the way around, and that way you can go right or left and get to it. It's kind of like a two-way street, and we can keep John Walter's idea of the fill mounted up in the middle, which is easy. We don't have to haul it away. We can just mount it there and stabilize it. Also, we're going to need a railing, and we can pick the brains of design for the grant as to how to make sure that we have the ability to hook somebody out that fell in, even though we have a railing. But the railing will need to be there so that the wheelchair doesn't go coasting out into the pond.
That's, okay, the railing and that sort of thing is certainly something we have to look at. Under certain circumstances, I think even a 6 foot wide is acceptable under UA.
Okay.
And I believe that the only blockage we need is not a full rail, but something for the wheels of a wheelchair. Now, I don't know how that fits if we're not doing a hard surface structure. We don't have a hard surface curb to prevent the wheels from rolling off. But this is some of what we can look into.
Yeah, certainly.
John Walter, the reason I brought up going right through, having the access slope, the pathway, going right through the middle here of the old putting green is because we really need to surface this area as well.
Great. No, I like your idea of going through the center and the two-way, gives more option for people. But when I watch the kids, it kind of comes off from the kids. So here's this 8-year-old girl who's got a deal. She wants to fish right here because she wants to see the worm right here. She wants to see the fish right here. And the other kid's got a fishing pole, wants to get around that person. And so from what I know of barrier-free requirements, like in the bathroom, barrier-free, you have to have a 5-foot turnaround, 60-inch circular turnaround space. That's why barrier-free bathrooms.
John, you gotta lean into this.
Oh, I'm sorry. So it's fine, going to the middle is fine. I think the 6 foot, but you don't want to less than 6 foot, but where you want to go from there, I don't care.
It depends on how, I just brought up the standards.
Uh-huh.
And if it's a walkway within a site, it has to be minimum of 6 feet, with
Okay.
slopes of 2%.
Yeah.
A multi-use trail has to be 8 feet. A regional trail system has to be 10 feet.
Okay, so we can go to 6 foot because it's single use. Okay. Anyway, that was basic. I just did it, Scott, want to know about the turnaround space and what was practical for a person in a wheelchair.
Right.
Now, I'm concerned about railings. If we put a board on the top of the railing, I worked with Leelanau Trails in developing the bridges and the stuff like that. So we came up with making sure the top was sloped, so some kid doesn't want to stand on top of the railing and fish or screw around. Then we'll have to have spindles not greater than 4 inches apart And then we'll have to decide whether they're gonna require us to have a 36 or a 42-inch high rail. So when we get into railings, go ahead, Scott.
If side rails are used, more than 25% must be lowered for easy viewing in various places along a boardwalk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this and the ADA redo of where I fished in Florida, and the rail along the whole new pier, every certain distance, it's been cut in half,
Oh, great.
so that wheelchair again. But
I wasn't aware of that.
do we need a railing for sure?
I'm not sure we should be talking about those ratings. We could talk for our next whole evening. That bridge is ADA, right? They can go take a wheelchair up there.
I don't think the
I don't
access
think
slope
so.
on either end is.
It's too steep. They only go two per second grade.
Right now, there's nothing there. And all we're doing is making a pathway around like any shoreline, but this pathway is gonna be more flat. And do we wanna have wheelchairs down there? I don't know. We've got a lot of our pathways out in Veronica Valley that you can't get wheelchairs in. If this is gonna be wheelchair accessible and a hard surface, you're talking about a lot of money, or is just this making the water beach access a little bit more, just a little bit better than what we have there? And we talk about these railings, Steve can probably remember forever, and I'm against putting a railing there.
I am too.
The other thing is this dirt pile up, John, we'll have to get on that. That's a nice picnic area, and to haul that dirt away, I think is better than piling it up.
Okay.
And to make a big mountain, there's so many people lay there and picnic and all that, and I like to keep it real low and,
Well, we've got places we can put that dirt for sure.
yeah, and, well,
That's also true.
that was one thing I was gonna get with you.
That's also true, John, if we're gonna run the access down to the middle.
Oh, I don't want it down the middle, I want it around the edge,
Okay.
because that'd be another excavation and everything else. Well, John and I will work on this, but if we're willing to move forward this year, because I looked at some of these dates, they're already 6 years old.
Oh, no, we gotta move forward.
Yeah, we just gotta move forward. We'll come up, John and I will sit down and we'll come up with a nicely halfway decent design and come up and just present it. Well, not present it, just chew it forward and put it in next year's budget.
Steve? Go ahead, Steve.
I think we should look closely at what Klaus has in the design for the park. This aspect was designed for the grant attempt. So there is a design in place. We made a decision as park commission and committee, I think too, to do everything that we do from this point forward will be universally accessible. We're right next to the parking lot. If we don't make this universally accessible, shame on us. We need to be able to have our vets come in their wheelchairs and get to this spot and fish. That's my 2 cents.
I agree.
I agree that the county owes it to the citizens to make this fishing access open to everybody, disabled or not. I do think that we can stay away from railings. This is something we'll have to investigate, but we're in agreement that this is a real priority that we need to begin to develop our plan so we can present it to the full commission yet this spring. Okay.
I think one last comment. I think what it might be beneficial before we get too far into the design to have Klaus sit with us. He's put a lot of time and we spent an awful lot of money to have him involved in designing what's going to happen in this very same exact spot. I think it would be good to pick his brain and have him sit with us because there are probably some things that we need to do for universal accessibility and wheelchairs in this location that he knows about flat out and can tell us this is the way it has to be. And that way we don't spend extra time designing when we don't have all the information.
Good suggestion.
That's good, Steve.
Never thought about getting him in there again.
Well, then how about if in terms of being clear about the work we're taking out of today's session, I will make contact with Klaus.
John and I will look into it. Maybe we can ride up there and meet him. We just want to make sure we got this on the radar so we can put it in the budget. And if we got to go meet with him, we can.
I think our committee needs to meet with Klaus. I don't want to farm this out. I want our committee to meet with Klaus.
The whole committee.
Yes,
Well, he's going to charge us for it.
not the commission, but just those of us right here today, just so
Well,
we can be clear, we all need to meet with Klaus, I think.
Well, I agree that it's this committee initially. Do all four of us need to meet with Klaus initially? Can one of the Johns
Well, no, they
do some of that initial work?
I'm just saying that by the time we get to our next committee meeting, it'd be nice to have Klaus involved in that too. I don't need to be, I don't know, I'm just saying, a lot gets lost in the, you know, if somebody's gonna talk to Klaus, that's one thing. If Klaus comes to the committee and it's on record, and we got minutes and we got a paper trail, you know, I mean, just saying, I don't know. It'd be nice to have him, I think, talk to the committee. But if it gets farmed out, that's okay too. I just threw my 2 cents in.
Well, and I'm only concerned about cost. If he'll come to one of our meetings and discuss it with all of us, that's wonderful. Yeah.
I don't want to have him come here unless we got a pretty good idea of what we want. And we got to get an idea of what we want, because the first thing he's going to say, well, what do you want? Once we get an idea of what we want, then it's a matter of a couple weeks later, run it by him and then say, hey, that's not bad. Why don't you come to our committee now and tell us your 2 cents and what we got to do then and how we have to go out for bid and whether we got to have a scope and stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's.
And he did have it in here as UA or ADA fishing location. So that was on the plan that we should make it UA or UDA, and the cost is gonna go up. But that was the plan that we applied for the grant.
Well,
You do not have a current agreement with Gosling Subak.
that's correct.
So in order to meet with him, you would probably have to potentially explore getting an amendment to that older contract in order to engage his services to do any review. And I would strongly suggest talking to Chet about that first.
What if Klaus Heinrich wanted to do this sort of thing on a volunteer basis, as a person, not as a representative?
You could ask him about that, but I would strongly suggest you talk to Chet before you move forward with contacting him.
But I think meeting with an engineering firm, go sitting down with a guy and asking him some questions and then do what you said, might have to have something formal on paper if he's gonna come here and document it. But a lot of us meet with engineering firms and just go in there and talk to them and say, hey, what are we thinking here? What you should do, what direction you want us to go in, and yada, yada.
Well, then, let's proceed this way. The first step will be for me to have a conversation with Chet at Laurel's suggestion to understand the ramifications of bringing Klaus back into this discussion. Then I will let you, the 2 Johns, know what the result of that is, so we know how far we can go, I guess, on our own.
Okay. This is gonna be a biggie.
Hey, Scott, was that universal regulations? What was that?
That was the state website.
There's so many different EDA regulations that.
And we should still have a good sketch ready, John.
Yeah, I know, that's
Yeah,
right.
you and I can get on that and say, this is
That's
what
what
we
I was
think.
asking Scott about.
If we want to have Klaus come in and after you talk with Chet, that's probably good advice, Laurel, and we'll go from there.
I'm clear.
All right.
I think we've got our action items clear with each of us towards our next committee meeting. We've gone through the agenda. I guess I'll open this up again for the public comment.
The number to call in is 231-256-8109.
Further board member comment? John?
Okay, probably should have brought it up during bigger discussions, but we can't have discussions on this, it's only comments. Again, I go back to the list that John Waller's had here, and it was a pretty good list. And we came up with 9 items or 8 items. Have a portable toilet be barrier free, prep the bridge, prep the fishing bridge, grade the parking lots, information and trail, additional playground. Laurel was gonna get with Dave on something about that, and build a bridge at the spillway between the duck pond and kid pond, and John was gonna get back with that. If this is what we had talked about, our next meeting next month, and we should see where we are on here, and either keep these as open items, because some of them are closed out, like we got a whole bunch of gravel for Scott, and I think it is gravel, I don't know if it is, but we should document it in our next minutes that these are the things we did, and these are the things and action items that we took. And did we go buy a toilet or not? And I thought we had enough money, but yeah, we gotta build a pad and screen. So it's not open for discussion, it wasn't on the agenda, but we should look hard at that list and be ready to see what we wanna do on these and report back to the full committee. That's my comment. Because I think we're doing a lot in our committee compared to some.
Well, since the other ones haven't met, then I would say you're right.
I'm not gonna say that. That didn't get recorded.
Steve?
Yeah, good point, John. We have some big things on our plate that we talked about, and the Porta-John situation, making an area maybe similar to what we did at Miles would be a nice improvement for this park, and it wouldn't cost a whole lot. So I think we should put that on our next agenda. So we have some things that we can look at that are less expensive that might fit in better this year.
Agreed. From my position all around, we will make that list part of our next
Make it
committee
as our next agenda.
agenda. I've actually done a couple of things relative to this porta potty, but I'll save it until more is done.
Right.
And for the next meeting. I think I'll have some concrete detail to share then. That's why I didn't put it on today's agenda. Motion to adjourn? John Walters, second from John Popa. All in favor? Meeting adjourned.
Nice to see you, Steve.
Great meeting.